All right, Kimball. So this video is for you, buddy. I know I kind of explained what exactly to do, but I figured, kind of seeing it is a little bit easier. So here you go. So I'm assuming you probably have this done, or somewhat. So I'm going to start with the master item just to explain what's going on here. Um, so he has this add item to inventory function that he uses. I recommend we're going to use a different one, but this is how I plug mine in. And just one thing to note, honestly, if you're building this before from experience, instead of doing an object reference for this, we can get a class and we should plug this into the item to add instead. Um, the reason for this, as you'll see when you get later into the video series, is when we start adding like chests and the shop and stuff like that, we're going to be adding and removing items from different inventories. Now, if we want to make this inventory component modular, I would recommend using this class um, um, as the item to add instead of the object reference, because when we start moving items from inventory to inventory, they're all going to be class references. And you can always get a class from an object reference, but you cannot get an object reference from a class. So when we start moving those items around, there's no way to use this function. So you have to make another function, which is kind of annoying. All right, so this is my approach to the add inventory. And you'll notice what I have here set up is when it succeeds, it destroys it. When it doesn't succeed, so let's say we have like some kind of huge number on an item we're trying to pick up, it won't just fail. It's gonna add what it can, and then it's gonna take away from the current quantity of this item, um, and use the quantity remaining as the new quantity. So okay, so here we go. Add to inventory. This is Ryan's system. I just kind of adapted it for what we're trying to do. I'm not going to explain a lot of this because I'm pretty sure you've gone through the actual inventory tutorial for Ryan, but I'm going to show you what we're looking at, more or less, and how I've kind of adapted it. So I'm not really going to explain all this. I'm just going to let you look at it. So find slot looks like this. And just like Ryan's system, we're either adding to a stack or we're creating a new stack, and we're using the find slot to determine if we're doing that for this. So actually, this is not correct. Do this a little bit different. One sec, I'm gonna check this real quick, because I'm pretty sure this is not correct. I had saved a version of my project before I kind of got too deep into the rebuild. And inventory. Yeah, so create new stack should be like this. Should be like that. And then this guy right here, instead of subtracting it. I'm going to plug in this right here and not use that. So this will be it. The reason we're doing this is instead of just subtracting one and doing this a bunch, we're just going to do it once, and we're going to add a new stack, and we're going to use the quantity remaining as that value. Now, this is important to remember that we do not, when we add an item to the actual world, when we have the quantity here, we do not set this higher than the max stack of the actual item. All right, so here, sorry about that. All right, so for add to stack, just trying to make sure I didn't skip anything. This is what we're looking at. So if the inventory is open, it kind of updates the slot, and if it's not, then we just update the actual array for the inventory quantities. And yes, we're going to do that as well. We're going to add that inventory quantities right here. This is just a simple array of integers. And we're going to use this in parallel with the inventory array, which is a class reference of master item. This was my first kind of attempt at a workaround. I found out about map variables later, but I actually kind of like the system a little bit better. So there you go. There's that. Down here, create new stack. So here you go, check inventory. It's pretty straightforward. We're comparing the inventory size to the length of the array. And we're gonna go ahead and now check out create new stack. Let me just make sure this logic's the same. Yeah, we're good. All right, so check it. Slightly redundant here. This is what Ryan does, but he checks it and then he checks it again here, which I guess works, but honestly, I don't even think you need that. He uses it more or less to call success or not success. And there you go for that. And notice, like, every time I'm using one of these functions, the object reference immediately turns into a class reference. So honestly, like, using the class is better than the object. So we do that. So we're basically taking that quantity remaining, we add it to a new stack, and then we set that quantity to 0. Notice his replicated sound system is still in here, and this is the only time we use the actual object reference for this function. But honestly, what you can do is we create another function or another variable called item to pick up, and we define this right here on this pickup kind of. If we're not auto picking up, we're actually doing like a press a button to pick something up. We set that right here. So why not just use that object reference instead for this, instead of using that. And then you could make the whole thing a class, and we could actually set up some system for not playing like the pickup sound when we're actually just moving stuff around. Alright, so there's that. Last part's really just the widget itself and how I add. This is the part that I feel is a little bit complicated and hard to explain. First of all, just so you understand what's going on here, I've left both in here just because I hadn't done the cleanup yet, but the uniform grid is what Jonathan uses. I recommend using a wrap box. The reason for this is more or less because we don't have to do all this math, and it's not that I don't like math, it just makes things simpler, and when we start removing items, we don't have to do more math to figure out where that item is located in the grid. So there's that. So I can explain this, I guess, real quick, just so you understand what's going on here. But we're using the inventory and the quantity. Inventory is the for each kind of array here, and then we take each array index and we get that quantity of the same thing. We use that we plug the index into the new slot. We use the quantity as the current stack, and we do the same thing we do in his function of just adding them to an array of all inventory slots, then update that slot, and then we add it to our container, which is a wrap box for me. So this is only being called when we first open the inventory and have it displayed. Now, how I have this one set up, because I'm doing VR, is every time I have like a main widget, and then within that main widget I have the separate like inventory, equipment, and all these different widgets. But that main inventory, that main widget destroys itself every time we're not, every time we hide that menu. But every time it's being shown, it more or less, for the first time it gets shown. And just so you understand, let me go to this guy. And oh yeah, before I forget, try pickup. This is my substitution. I just plug in the add to inventory here, which again, notice I'm just immediately making it a class, so you would just plug that into here instead of using the item to pick up. And what was I going to show you? Okay, yeah, toggle, here we go. So because I'm doing VR, basically you have to make an actor, and that houses the actual widget. So that's why I'm spawning an actor here, and then getting the reference of it, and then I'm more or less grabbing the actual like kind of reference in game more or less and casting it to it, setting it here, and then updating. So what I'm doing here is the first time this is actually being displayed, we're gonna leave this blank because we're more or less trying to get it to do this. Now this is this example is before I actually created the kind of widget inside another widget, but just so you understand what's going on there. So this is on widget creation. We do this, and we only do that once. Every other time when that widget's open and being displayed, we're going to be doing these two guys right here. And notice the logic over here. So when it's open, if it's not open, that's why we're not checking is it open, even though technically it is here, is because we're trying to get that. So not the best described or use of words here for that, but it works. And then if it is open, this is more or less being called when we do this guy right here. So when we create a new stack, more or less, we are doing this functionality. And what I'm doing is I'm just grabbing the last index because we just added it, right? So it's there, and it's the last one. And I grab the quantity and the inventory. I do the same thing I did kind of more or less down here, but I'm only adding one, no loop, and then I'm adding it to the, whatever it's called, the array of all inventory slots. Then I update that slot, and then I add it to the child, add it to the wrap box. Now on remove, and this is a little bit ahead of I think where you're at, but just so you have reference to what's going to what I recommend doing is setting up an on remove kind of check here. So whenever we are removing an item, true, it's going to do this, and more or less we're going to use the index of the item we're trying to remove, which will get when we plug this function, or when we use this update inventory function, we'll have that on reference. But here you go, this is that. So we're setting a local slot. This is just, just to kind of keep track of that because we might be changing it. Then we're going to remove that index from the actual all inventory slots, and then we're going to remove it from the wrap box inventory. And then I do an update here to update the index of each slot so that we, and here you go, this is inside of the inventory. It's really straightforward. You could actually use a set node if you wanted to. So instead of doing that, if I wanted, I could just do something like that. Plug this in like that. But I was figuring, for modularity, and maybe I could do some other functionality there. That is that. That's really it, honestly. If you have questions, let me know. Um, yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, I think I got it. All right. So yeah, like and subscribe, all the fun stuff. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you got questions or comments or whatever. You can throw it in the comments below. Yep. Hope that was useful, buddy.